I was in grad school for 3 years at UC Berkeley doing a dual master's in city planning and public health. Graduating without debt was really important to me because I had a lot of debt from undergrad. So I'm gonna show you everything I did to cover the cost of tuition while I was in grad school. So first off, as a California resident, I qualified for in-state tuition, which is significantly cheaper than out-of-state tuition. And unfortunately, if you are an international student going to a public university like UC Berkeley, the sticker price is even higher. But if you are an out-of-state student, you can follow the criteria to be eligible to get in-state tuition at many universities, usually within a semester. So by the second semester or second year, you will qualify for in-state tuition if you've done the requirements like change your driver's license, your bank account, have an address in the state, all those sort of things. So make sure you look into that at your university if you are going to a public university. When I was accepted to UC Berkeley, I was awarded the College of Environmental Design Dean's First Year Fellowship, which was worth about $16,000. Half of that went to pay for my tuition the first semester, and then the other half, about $8,000, they gave me in cash as a stipend. Even though $16,000 might sound generous, that really just paid for about one semester of the cost of living and the tuition. My second year, when I was admitted into the Masters of Public Health program, the School of Public Health gave me an additional $1,000 scholarship, which is basically nothing. And at that point, they were not trying to recruit me because I was already a UC Berkeley student, so they just gave me something so that at least it wasn't nothing. But I wish I got more from the School of Public Health. The main way I paid for graduate school was by being a graduate student instructor. At UC Berkeley, we call this being a GSI. At other universities, they might call it being a TA, like a teaching assistant. There's also research versions of this award where you research with a professor. At UC Berkeley, this covered the price of tuition, but you also got a living stipend of about $1,800 a month. And under this, we were in a union and we were part-time employees of the university. So our health insurance was also covered, and we also got retirement benefits. So that was all really awesome. And although $1,800 a month might sound great, the Bay Area is super expensive. So that was not enough to cover the cost of living in the Bay Area. Plus, I still was on the hook to pay my program fees, which are separate than tuition. And when it comes to grad school, there's so many little different categories that it's really hard to know the final number of how much everything costs until you're there. I was able to be a graduate student instructor every single semester except for my first semester, which was a really awesome way to cover the cost of my tuition. However, I want to give you some tips on how to find these TA positions or graduate student instructor positions. Generally, you have to have a relationship with the professor. So often it's not common to get these positions until you are in your second year, and generally you will do the position with a professor who you know, like you've taken their class, and then they know you, and then you get a position that way. And you do have to apply, turn in your cover letter, that kind of thing, but it really is relationships. It's who you know. I was able to get one of these positions my first year because I had some insider information. I was an undergraduate at UC Berkeley, so I already knew a handful of professors from when I was an undergrad. And so my recommendation to you is to really start networking as soon as possible for these positions. Start your first semester networking, meeting with professors, asking them if they have positions open the following semester. My other tip on getting these positions is to look outside of your department. You don't have to teach in your department. You can teach anywhere you are qualified to teach. So if you have a professional background or your undergraduate degree was in something different, but you are skilled enough to teach, intro to chemistry or something like that, go ahead and apply for positions in other departments as well. For example, in undergrad, I did a lot of work on global poverty and international development. That was not at all my focus in grad school when I was studying city planning. However, the department that I looked at was in that global poverty and practice department, and they had a position open, and I was still qualified enough to teach it, even though that was not my area of focus in grad school. When it comes to researching for these positions, the university should have a university-wide list where you can see through all the positions available across the university, and you click through different departments to see what's available. And you're gonna send your resume and that sort of thing. But if you have any way to reach out to the professor personally or get an introduction, like do whatever it takes to get these positions because they really are so worthwhile for helping pay for grad school. Also, talk to your friends because sometimes they can give you introductions. For example, the class that I taught, one of the semesters there was a second option for the class, and I was able to recommend one of my friends for the position. So teaching might seem like a lot of work, but I actually really liked it, and I tracked my hours, and it was generally about 10 hours a week that I spent leading the sessions. I led 2 one-hour sessions, and then I attended the professor's sessions, and then the time to read the material and prep for the class, host office hours, all of that was only about 10 hours a week of work, except for the weeks where I had grading. That was only 2 big times in the semester where I had to do a ton of grading, and then that was a lot of work, but that was temporary. In addition to teaching, I also worked part-time jobs the entire time I was in grad school for 10 hours a week. The job I had prior to grad school, I continued on part-time once I entered grad school. And the awesome thing, if you're in grad school, you probably qualify for work study. And work study means that the university pays 50% of your salary, which makes it easier for a company to hire you because part of your salary is being covered by the financial aid of work study. So the job I had prior to college, I was only making $17 an hour, but once I was able to add on work study, they increased my salary to $22 an hour. My second year, I had a part-time job as a policy research associate working 10 hours a week for $20 an hour. Again, this was also on work study. Every summer, I had a full-time job for about 10 weeks. Your university will likely be a big help with trying to get a summer job. There's lots of organizations that like to hire graduate students for summer internships, for doing research, things like that. And so a lot of them will come to the university, and your university will post a lot of job opportunities. Every single person I knew in my program had a summer job. Some universities even go through a process of matching you with an organization. For example, in the city planning department, things were very DIY, but they sent out lots of job opportunities through the email listserv. But in the School of Public Health, there was a whole program and a coordinator helping you get matched with organizations. So it shouldn't be too hard to find a summer job. Of course, if you have a company or organization that's on your radar, go to their website, see if they offer internships. But I also encourage you to reach out because sometimes they are not posting about internship opportunities. They haven't thought about it, but if they get a really awesome email with your resume, they might tell you, hey, actually, we're interested in taking a summer intern. However, I encourage you to look into these positions very early because some of these places are recruiting as early as January for their summer spots. So look into those as soon as possible. Do not wait until May comes around. One summer I worked for a policy organization, and then the second summer I worked for a startup in San Francisco. Both jobs paid about $5,000 over the summer, which paid for the cost of my living during the summer, and then generally I had some money that was extra saved for the next semester. I also did random, what I'd call gig work, just random one-off kind of stuff. Anytime I could do stuff for cash, I was down if I had the time. For example, I got a couple consulting gigs working with my now husband. He was starting a business and he couldn't afford employees, and so I would help out from time to time and earn some extra cash that way. I would do babysitting. I would do all kinds of random things if I had the time. And often you'll find around the university there are lots of kind of gig type things you can do. For example, often during grading season, universities are looking for readers, people to read people's finals, things like that, and grade them, and they'll pay you just for a short period to do that. But now there's so many gig work opportunities like walking dogs on the WAG app, doing TaskRabbit, all those different kinds of things. So there's different opportunities to be flexible and earn some extra cash. And I know that that might sound like a lot, doing a dual master's and teaching every semester and working a part-time job, but it didn't feel that way. It felt very manageable. I also tracked my time very closely, and I saw that on average, I only spent 30 hours a week between going to classes, studying, writing my papers, and doing my jobs. So it really was okay. I think what's different from undergrad to grad school, especially if you've spent a lot of time working in between, is you are just a lot smarter about using your time. In undergrad, it feels very stressful and you pull a lot of all-nighters, but oftentimes that's because we're like hanging out, talking with our friends, like sitting in the library, not actually being that productive for many hours, where in grad school, it was a lot easier for me to focus and actually manage my time effectively. Even with all those jobs, I still took out $20,000 of student loans, mainly because the cost of living in the Bay Area is really high, where the average rent for a room is anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 a month. So you have to take that into consideration if you're planning to go to school in a big city that has a high cost of living. My tuition was covered, but I was responsible for my program fees, which were $3,000 a semester, which I took out loans for. My first year of grad school, I had cancer, and so I had all these medical bills. During grad school, everyone's getting married, so I was always going to weddings and having to give wedding gifts and all that stuff. So, things add up in grad school because you're still living your life while you're in school. But all of that was worth it to me because as soon as I graduated, I got a job making $80,000 a year, and my salary quickly went up after that. And so it was worth it to me, and I was able to pay off my student debt in a few years. I hope all these details gave you some ideas on how to go about finding funding for grad school. You can chat with me during my office hours if you have questions or you want to brainstorm ideas on how to find funding for grad school. Sign up with the link in the description.